Tonight on Carolina News, manhunt in Brussels. Authorities now have pictures of the suspects who they believe are responsible for yesterday's bombings. We'll update you on the search abroad next. International effects, how South Carolina lawmakers are reacting to foreign terrorism across the globe. And Home Sweet Home, how local B&Bs are capitalizing on the inconveniences of traditional hotels. All of that and more, Carolina News starts right now.
Live from the capital city, Carolina News brings you your news first. With breaking news and in-depth reporting. Up-to-the-minute weather. And all your sports news and highlights. It's all here, now, on Carolina News.
Hello and welcome to Carolina News. I'm Malik Rankin.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Deannica Thomas. Our top story today. A massive manhunt is underway for a suspect in the Brussels bombing that occurred yesterday, killing 34 and wounding 270. Our Kevin Smart has been following this story since it broke and is in the Greenhouse studio with the latest.
Thanks, Deannica. Belgian authorities say that 2 of the 4 attackers have been identified. The 2 identified carried out the suicide attacks in the Brussels airport and at the metro station near the European Union offices and the American Embassy. Belgian authorities are still looking for one man who they believe is involved with the airport bombings. One person who was taken into custody in the aftermath of the attacks, but was later interrogated and released. All of Brussels stood still today to mourn the victims of Tuesday's terror bombings. A massive manhunt is now underway for this man, who police believe planted the biggest bomb at the Brussels airport that did not detonate. Witnesses described the scene at the airport as a war zone.
I saw some blood on the roads. I saw a lot of people in panic, crying. I saw a guy with a head wound, and some people with blood on their clothes and stuff. And then we started realizing that something terrible had happened.
An hour after the airport bombs went off, a bomb ripped through a subway station near the European Union offices.
I didn't know at that moment in time if the attack was happening on the train I was on or if it was happening at the station as we were pulling up to it.
President Obama, who is in Argentina today, said the U.S. stands behind the Belgian people because the U.S. knows this feeling all too well.
Our countries as well have known the scourge of terrorism, and we've seen our own citizens impacted by this kinds of senseless, vicious violence.
Belgium's threat level is at its highest level, and the airport where the bombing occurred will be closed through Thursday because of the investigation. Back in the U.S., security has ramped up at transportation hubs in response to the attacks. The United States Department of Justice also announced a travel alert to all of Europe because of the potential for more terror attacks. The alert expires on June 20th. That's all from the Greenhouse. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Kevin. The attacks in Brussels are also affecting those trying to seek refuge in South Carolina. Taylor Hollander is in the newsroom to take a deeper look into a bill that could make it difficult for refugees to relocate to the Palmetto State.
In South Carolina, Senator Kevin Bryant is co-sponsoring a bill that will address how the state will handle refugees, as well as putting civil liabilities on the refugees' sponsors. Opposition has spent the past week filibustering the bill, but in light of the massacre in Brussels, Bryant says the Senate is motivated to get the bill passed now.
ISIS has proven that terrorists will infiltrate the refugee programs. They've done it in Europe, they've done it in other states, and we don't want an attack on South Carolinians.
Bryant says the attacks and disturbing images coming out of Brussels are forcing the state Senate to sit down and work through this bill to ensure a greater sense of security in South Carolina.
But now I feel like there's an even stronger commitment to stay, work through any amendments that any member may offer, let everyone have a say, whether they're for the bill or against the bill. But I'm committed, and I believe I have support with my colleagues to not adjourn until this bill passes.
As of now, only 2 Syrian refugees have settled into Richland County, with the help of the Lutheran Services Carolina Charity, a group that helps refugees settle in when they first arrive in South Carolina. The group has helped nearly 50 refugees from different countries settle into the state and does not agree with the limitations that the bill would put on their charity.
It is an unfair and, in some sense, unconstitutional.
That's it. The Senate met at 2 p.m. today to discuss the refugee bill. Bryant predicts that with the amendments made, the bill will pass through the Senate this evening and will move on to be discussed in the House tomorrow. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Taylor. South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley discussed the roads bill and the delays it's facing in a press conference today at the State House. The roads bill was proposed to raise funds for South Carolina roads and repair maintenance. The bill was sent back to the House after the Senate removed the gas tax and approved the bill.
And that's key. So we have said to the House, if you concur, we can move forward. If you don't concur, we will likely see that the roads bill will die again this year.
This is the second year the legislature has tried to pass the bill. Their session ends in May, making it of utmost priority. It was chilly this morning, but the weather seems to be warming up. Our weather specialist, Christina Zagami, is out in the greenhouse gardens. Christina, what's it like out there?
Temperatures are definitely warming up. It's beautiful outside right now. Temperatures right at 77 degrees. It's nice and sunny, not a cloud in sight. It's all thanks to a high pressure sitting right off the coast of Georgia, leaving the entire southeast region with nothing but sunny, clear blue skies. Temperatures will drop this evening to about low 50s, so be sure to grab a jacket if you're heading out. Tomorrow should be another nice day, but clouds will be rolling in. Can't say so much for the weekend, though. Stay tuned for more on weather.
Western Tuesday was a big night for the presidential frontrunners. Our Caitlin Hummel tells us how many delegates Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton won, and what that means for both parties looking forward.
Donald Trump picked up 58 delegates in his anticipated win in Arizona last night. Hillary Clinton also scored big in Arizona, picking up 41 delegates. She credited her volunteers for last night's victory.
I'm also very grateful to all of our volunteers who are working so hard in this campaign.
Bernie Sanders was victorious in the Utah and Idaho caucuses, but despite winning 2 states, he only picked up 43 delegates.
In Utah, tonight in Idaho, and tonight in Arizona, there are record-breaking turnouts in terms of voters.
Ted Cruz was also victorious in Utah, scoring 69% of the vote and picking up all 40 delegates.
Last night was a terrific victory. You know, in Utah, we were hoping very much to break 50%.
John Kasich finished disappointingly third in both Republican primaries. Midlands Tech political science professor Shikri Sabaga says looking forward to the Republican convention, Ted Cruz has a chance, but his battle will be an uphill climb.
Trump is 60% of the way. Cruz, he's got to win, I think, 80% of the remaining elections in order to win. That's going to be a tall order.
As we move towards the Democratic convention, Clinton is moving full steam ahead, but Sanders could also play a role.
He has to decide whether or not he is part of a movement to move the Democratic Party to the left, and so for progressivism or for the sake of progressivism.
As the Republican and Democratic conventions draw nearer, it still seems to be Hillary Clinton's and Donald Trump's games to lose. Caitlin Hummel, Carolina News.
The Democratic primaries will be held on March 26th in Alaska, Hawaii, and Washington. The Republicans will have to wait a little while longer. Their primary is April 5th in Wisconsin. Jeb Bush endorsed presidential candidate Ted Cruz. In a statement released yesterday, Bush said, quote, "Ted is a consistent, principled conservative who has demonstrated the ability to appeal to voters and win primary contests." Bush also urged voters to reject frontrunner Donald Trump. Bush's endorsement came a month after he ended his own bid for the Republican presidential nomination. Just as polls were closing out west last night, GOP frontrunner Donald Trump tweeted a message directed at Republican rival Senator Ted Cruz and his wife, Heidi Cruz. Trump was angry about a campaign ad featuring his wife, so he tweeted this message and then quickly deleted it. He then reposted it a few minutes later, slightly changing the language but keeping the same message. Cruz was quick to respond.
Last night, Donald threatened my wife. He went directly after my wife. And I got to tell you that, number one, Heidi, my wife, she's the daughter of missionaries in Africa. She is my best friend in the world. And if Donald wants to get in a character fight, he's better off sticking with me because Heidi is way out of his league.
It is important to note that the ad wasn't placed by Cruz's campaign, but rather by the Make America Awesome group, who is opposed to Trump's candidacy.
President Obama wrapped up his trip to Cuba, where he looked to improve relations with the Cuban government. This visit was a historic moment for Cubans all over. Edwin Santamaria reports on the visit and what it meant to Cubans.
President Barack Obama is the first sitting president to visit Cuba in 88 years. The president looked to steer United States and Cuban relations in the right direction. He wrapped up his trip talking directly to the Cuban people.
I have come here to bury the last remnant of the Cold War in the Americas.
Relations between the two nations were at an all-time low during the Cold War, when the United States placed an embargo on Cuba. However, President Obama is optimistic about the future.
Cuba doesn't have to be defined by being against the United States any more than the United States should be defined by being against Cuba. And I'm hopeful for the future because of the reconciliation that's taking place among the Cuban people.
Gabrielle Aarons, a student of Cuban descent at the University of South Carolina, feels this historic trip can give her the opportunity to learn more about her roots.
As a grandchild of Cuban immigrants that came to America maybe 50, 60 years ago, it's really exciting to see that maybe there's a possibility to go back there and kind of learn about my historic roots that I haven't been able to do.
Janelis Villalata, also of Cuban descent, feels positive about the visit.
I think it's a good thing. I think that from what I've heard, he's bringing a lot of hope to the Cuban people.
President Obama is hopeful relations will improve between the two countries.
And to President Castro, who I appreciate being here today, I want you to know, I believe my visit here demonstrates you do not need to fear a threat from the United States.
It would take time for relations between the two countries to be where they need to be, but they're heading in the right direction. Edwin Santamaria, Carolina News.
President Barack Obama's trip ended with an exhibition baseball game between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cuban national team, signifying unity between the two countries.
A 13-year-old driver of a go-kart was killed Monday night in a crash involving a pickup truck. The victim was identified as Jelena Carter. Investigators say the go-kart driver was turning on Goodwin Road just before 8 p.m. when he crashed with the oncoming pickup truck. Officials say the go-kart driver was not wearing a helmet. 2 Hartsville residents are charged with 2 counts of unlawful neglect of a child after drug tests for them and 2 children came back positive. According to the State Law Enforcement Division, 22-year-old Melinda Phillips and 33-year-old Sharkil Robinson were drug tested after one of the 2 children, a 2-month-old, died back in February. SLED allegedly found marijuana and cocaine inside the home. The other child is still alive.
The city of Sumter is honoring one of its own. March 23rd has been proclaimed as Betty Diaz Clark Day in the city of Sumter. Dr. Betty Clark was a pastor in Sumter, and now she is the pastor of Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston. She is the first female pastor of the historic church. Her appointment comes less than a year after the tragic shooting that took the lives of 9 church members.
Up next, if you procrastinated finding a hotel room for USC graduation, the door hasn't closed on finding somewhere to stay.